Okay, we are live. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the mishap. We were having some technical issues and some feedback and audio feedback, so we had to end the broadcast. I'm sorry about that, but we are back, and hopefully, so are you. So, welcome to UoPeople Meets and Blinkhorn. I am Pascaline Servan-Schreiber, Vice President for Business Development at University of the People. And UoPeople Meets is a monthly webinar series that we are now broadcasting live on YouTube to inspire, educate, and learn from wonderful speakers who have had distinguished careers and who can teach us all about what they have done and their perspective on the world. So get ready to be inspired. We are going to be having a conversation for about 10 minutes, and then Anne will be happy to take your questions. So please make sure that you put all your questions in the chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. Can't guarantee that we'll get to all of them, but we sure will try. You can also see this event again on the YouTube channel, and we will also post it on UoPeople Career Service Center. And don't forget to like the channel, subscribe to it, and off we go. So my guest today is Anne Blinkhorn. Anne specializes in building leadership teams for businesses at the intersection of media, marketing, and technology. Anne founded Blinkhorn in New York in 2009, following 7 years as a leading executive recruiter at Spencer Stuart. She has reshaped senior leadership teams for established media companies, transforming their businesses, and has also recruited executive talent to earlier stage digital companies, working to rapidly grow their brands and franchises. Anne has led CEO and other senior level engagements for a diverse range of clients, including Comcast, Hearst, Microsoft, and Dow Jones, Insider Inc., and Huffington Post, among others. Anne's background includes over 25 years of traditional and digital media operating experience combined with executive search experience. So Anne is here to talk to us today about the art and science of recruiting. So Anne, welcome.
Thank you. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here today and to meet with all of you. And before we get started, I just want to say I congratulate all of you for making an investment in your and your family's future by pursuing a high quality education through University of the People. It really, we all know it's a sacrifice, it's time, it's money. You're doing this on top of working a full-time job. So again, I applaud you for your hard work, and I'm really delighted to be here today. And I really do want to get into the questions, and I hope I can be helpful to you as you think about your careers and your path forward. I will preface this conversation by saying, my perspective is really shaped by working for for-profit companies in the United States, primarily in the media sector. And I will say that, if you're pursuing a career in healthcare or in physics, the dynamics may be a little bit different. So I just wanted to lay that out at the outset. I thought I'd give you all a little bit of background about myself and how I got into this business. I've been in the media business for virtually my entire life. My parents were journalists, so I grew up around news organizations, and that really helped me build a passion and interest in the media world. And so following business school at Harvard, I launched my career at the New York Times Company on the business side of that organization, working first in corporate strategy and then across various business units. I transitioned to executive search in 2002 with Spencer Stuart, which is a large global firm, where I really learned the fundamentals of executive search. And because I was able to build my professional expertise and my base of clients through Spencer Stewart, that enabled me to actually launch my own business in 2009. And I now run a boutique media firm that works exclusively with media and marketing companies around the world, mostly US based, however. And we do retained executive searches for these companies. And just to explain, the typical scenario is that a CEO or a board of directors of a company will see that there is a need to bring in an outside executive to help fill an important business objective. And they may try to exhaust their own network of relationships to fill the role. And at a certain point, they say, you know what, we need to have someone dedicated to identifying the best possible candidate for this role. And they will bring in an outside executive search firm. And that's where we come in. So our process involves working with our clients to really fully understand the scope of the role and the requirements for the job, and the key factors that will make an executive successful in the position. And so we scope that out. Then we create a position specification, and we, based on research of the marketplace, research on executives, we actually go out and have in-depth conversations with top prospects to identify people who would be a good fit for the role. We narrow the field. We work closely with these candidates, with the client, to narrow the field to a finalist. Then we conduct in-depth reference checks on the person's background. We negotiate compensation, and we finally bring the search to a close. So it's a very labor-intensive process. It involves a lot of iteration, and especially in the media world, which is right now under a continued change. The media world has been experiencing disruption since the dawn of the internet 20 years ago, and there's no end in sight to this disruption. So there's a continuing need for people who are embracing the future and who are able to address new and different challenges posed by new technologies and new consumer behavior. So that's, in a nutshell, what we are working on right now at Blinkhorn. And again, as Pascaline mentioned, we work with a diverse roster of clients, earlier stage companies, established companies in transformation. And it's been an incredibly rich and rewarding experience leading my own practice. So that's really, my opening statement, and I would love to get into a Q&A with the group.
Sorry, thank you. Anne, thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction to what you do and a great overview of the search process. So can you maybe go a little bit more into how the process works? For example, if I am looking for a job, if I'm a student or if I'm employed looking for a job, do I reach out to an executive search firm and say, hi, here I am, find me a job? Is that how it works? Or is it the other way around?
That's a really interesting question. And I will say, again, the work that we do is primarily with very senior executives who have 15, 20-year track records. So the networking process is perhaps a little bit different from someone coming directly out of school. However, my advice has always been, whether it's someone who's 20 years old or 45 years old, the best way to approach a job search is to really understand your strengths, your interests, and then matching that against companies and potential job opportunities. And once you have kind of a framework for your job search and have identified companies or organizations that are of interest to you, my best advice is to really try to get into the companies directly through any possible connections that you might have to that organization. Or if you don't have connections, try to go directly to the person who is the hiring executive with a well-crafted letter or email that outlines why you would be a good fit for this organization. That's kind of one whole set of work that you would need to be doing as a job seeker. As well as doing that, you would want to reach out to, again, if you're a more senior level executive, you would want to reach out to executive recruiters on a selected basis, and really try to, through research, you can identify these people very easily. Identify recruiters who work in the field that you're interested in. Reach out directly to them and make sure that you are on their radar screen. So that would be my advice, in terms of job searches for people at perhaps the mid or senior levels.
So that is great advice. So in order for people to be seen by executive recruiters, right? So if you're in your job and you're, how do you make sure that you are visible to people who are looking for your kind of talent so that they can come and hunt you down, right? as a question. You guys are called headhunters for a reason.
Well, that's a really good question. And I think that, first of all, the good news is that, and I'm sure all of you around the world are familiar with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an incredibly useful tool for executive recruiters and for job seekers. So I would say every one of you needs to have a very well-developed LinkedIn profile that includes, a photograph, background information, very concise information on the jobs you've had, your educational experience. And that is kind of a foundation for anyone in the job market. I would say LinkedIn is at a minimum, you've got to be on LinkedIn. Beyond that, I would say that, it's a matter of striking the right balance between really focusing in on building your skills, building your reputation within an organization, and really doing outstanding work. And at the same time, making sure that you are connecting with other organizations in your field and being part of informal groups, whether it is the Media and Marketing Association of New York, Advertising Women of America, whatever field you might be in, making sure that you're connected to those informal associations, and attending conferences that are in your field of interest. This is actually quite useful. And I cannot tell you how many times I've been to a media conference and bumped into a person at a lunch. We get into a conversation and they say, you know what, we actually would really like to work with you on a new project. And could you please, follow up next week? We'd like to have a conversation. These are the kinds of things that happen, in a very serendipitous way at conferences or through informal networking. So I would say, try to strike a balance between doing outstanding work, doing your job well, but also getting outside and meeting colleagues from other companies, from other organizations, and really keeping track of what's going on in the industry.
That's great advice, and networking is always a good thing. We have a question about your background, Anne. Actually, talking about LinkedIn, one of our viewers says, I viewed your LinkedIn profile and I'm impressed with your experience working for White House Presidential Office of Personnel as a consultant. However, it lasted only for a year, and I think it was a fabulous period in your career path. So can you please share what you most liked about this job and what that was about?
Thank you for that question. And it's really an interesting question because this was a bit of a detour from my kind of core business career. I took the opportunity to work with the Obama administration as they were setting up their new team in Washington following Barack Obama's historic presidential win in 2008. So I basically spent a good 6 to 9 months working with the Office of Presidential Recruiting to help them really upgrade their systems and their processes in terms of identifying, vetting, and bringing on board federal appointees. It was a fascinating experience. I had contemplated, actually moving to DC and spending several years in government, because I do believe in public service, and I believe that it only enriches a person to have experience in different sectors, whether it's corporate, nonprofit, academic, government. I think all of these are very enriching experiences. At the end of the day, it didn't make sense for me to move to DC and commit to several years in DC for me at that time. And I therefore pivoted and invested in building my own search practice.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. You actually touched on vetting and reference checks and all of that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the process from an employer point of view and from a recruiting point of view. What does that mean? What is a reference check, and what are people looking for?
That's a really important question. And I find that this is an area where companies typically do not do a great job. I think there's in many cases, a hiring executive will default to someone, he or she knows, who is a friend of a friend, and there is no real due diligence done on the candidate, and you end up, in many cases, with a disaster. It is really important to get underneath the resume. And in a way, this is where my family's, reporting background and my the fact that I'm the daughter of newspaper reporters comes in handy, because you can take what someone says at face value. You can take you have to trust that they're sharing. You hope that they're sharing accurate information, but that isn't always the case. So, we do informal reference checking throughout a search. And then when we get to the point where we have a finalist, we actually do formal reference checking. And this is where we talk to perhaps 6 individuals or so who have worked with the finalist in different capacities: a boss, a direct report, a peer, a partner, a client. And we actually talk to these individuals about the finalists, what the finalist has accomplished, contributed, that relates to the job they are stepping into. So it's a very in-depth look at what this person's background really is all about. And it has to tie directly to the requirements of the job going forward. And I should mention that one of the practices we use, the methodologies we use in our search practice, is called competency-based assessment. And that means that we believe that the best predictor of future success is past performance. So if we are looking for a chief revenue officer who has transformed a sales organization, and that's the job that the client needs to get done going forward, we will look at people's track record in that specific area. If they've been a chief revenue officer but have not done a transformation, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people who have successfully transformed organizations. So we dig into this throughout the search process, but we really verify and corroborate through reference checking.
So another piece, obviously, of a job search or a recruiting process is a salary or compensation discussion. So can you maybe explain a little bit how that works, both from a candidate's point of view and from the recruiter point of view? And what are the things that could be helpful to our viewers when they look at their careers and their compensation and how to approach this?
That's an important question, and it does tie into the art and science of employment, because there really are, when you're dealing with compensation, at least in the world that I operate in, you can rely on compensation studies, and there are actually compensation consultants who will come in and do an in-depth survey of people in a particular functional area and give you their recommendations on the range, the compensation range that would be appropriate for a given role. So that's one set of data. But then, at the end of the day, it's going to be a negotiation with the top candidate. So if there's a person who is just exceptional and brings all of the qualifications that the client company is looking for, and their compensation expectations are higher than what the data suggests, the company has a decision to make. Are we going to step up and pay more for this person because we really think they're worth it? Or are we going to say, no, that's beyond our range, and we're going to keep looking, and maybe we'll end up with someone who has 75% of what we're looking for? So it really is an interesting, it's an art and science figuring out the appropriate compensation package. From a candidate's perspective, there are many laws in the United States now that forbid recruiters from asking what a person's current compensation is. So what we do, it's a kind of patchwork across the United States. Some states have these rules and legislation, some don't. So what we do as recruiters is we say, if we're kind of zeroing in on a finalist, we'll say, what are your compensation expectations? Where do you need to be in terms of a base salary, potential bonus opportunity, and perhaps an equity component? And then we kind of listen to that and try to kind of work with that in arriving at a package that is fair for both parties. At the end of the day, it's all about a win-win. That's the way I look at these searches. Is the job opportunity has to provide growth for the executive, and has to provide a step up from a compensation standpoint in order to make it a real fit. And from the company's perspective, they're looking for someone with a skill set that they may not have, and they have to believe that the return on the investment, so to speak, is there in offering the person a very attractive compensation package.
Thank you for that. So since the epidemic started, have you seen your corporate clients reprioritize or add new skill sets or behaviors or requirements to their searches?
That's such a great question. And so much has changed here over the last 2 years. You know, the good news is in the media sector, many companies had already been experimenting with remote work. And so, and because it's a knowledge-based industry, the transition to going virtual was probably easier than perhaps for some other industry sectors. We had, you know, but that said, the kind of cultural impact of remote work has been very, very intense. And I think that companies are still grappling with, you know, how do we move forward? Do we expect people to be physically in an office going forward? Most of my clients have not figured this out yet. You know, and creating culture and creating you know, an inspired and motivated team is just, you know, a lot harder with a virtual you know, setup. So that's something everyone's grappling with. Then in the United States as well, we have had, as many of you know, a reckoning around race. And there is increasing recognition that American companies need to do more to diversify their workforces and particularly diversify the senior leadership of these companies. So this has been a focus for us. Frankly, we've been working on this for years. We've always committed to our clients to introduce a diverse slate of candidates. But there's no question that the focus on making sure that we as recruiters are introducing a diverse slate of candidates and you know, providing that to our clients in every search engagement, that is absolutely essential. So I guess I would also add that you know, the pandemic and the ease with which many companies have moved to remote work has really opened up opportunities for people in, you know, perhaps tertiary markets outside of the coasts who, you know, really wouldn't have had access to top media jobs in New York or LA or San Francisco. Now the pool is open. I'm dealing with companies who are fine having a remote executive team. I'm working with a client right now whose CEO is based in Vermont. Her head of HR is based in San Diego, and the head of operations is based in Atlanta. So that frees up, you know, from a corporate perspective and from a job seeker or executive perspective, it really opens up a broader world of opportunities.
We now have a question about cultural intelligence at work. So how can a recruiter evaluate an applicant's cultural intelligence based on a simple interview?
That's, you know, that is another excellent question. We've got some great questions today, Pascaline. Wow. You know, that is in every case where we're looking at a candidate, what we're doing is we're collecting multiple data points on that individual. You know, one data point is the interview. Another data point is understanding the culture of the companies they've worked in. Another data point, as I mentioned earlier, is reference checking. So we're kind of putting together a composite picture of this individual based on multiple data points. And, you know, part of the reason I think I've been able to lead and build my own boutique firm is because I have such breadth and depth of experience across many different media companies in the United States. And each one of them has a unique history, and knowing about that history and how the culture of these various businesses has evolved has really served me well. So for example, there are some companies, and I mean, here's, a present example in the media world is there is uh, a very successful digital media company called Barstool Sports. And this is a company that has grown very quickly, but along the way, they've run into problems in terms of the way they treat women. And there's a culture that is, I would say, somewhat chauvinistic. So knowing that a person was at Barstool Sports and in an executive capacity would, for me, be somewhat of I would take a note on that. And I would not necessarily assume anything about the executive being chauvinistic or hostile to people who are, of different backgrounds. But I would make a mental note, and I would, through the course of my due diligence, try to dig into that a little bit further. So that's an example of how, knowing the culture of these various companies comes into play. But at the end of the day, an individual, assessing an individual's emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence is going to amount to, all of the interactions we have with this person and the reference checking.
So we've all had situations of jobs that didn't work out, where it wasn't the right fit. It didn't, maybe we got fired, or maybe we had to leave. So how does that impact one's career and one's prospect for finding the next job?
My feeling, I'm not at all turned off by executives who have been fired or have left abruptly. What I need to know is why. Okay. And you really need to do a lot of work to understand the circumstances around some of these, pivot points or changes in a person's career. And again, my view is don't assume anything. Go into the discussion, ask the candidate, why did you leave this company? What were the circumstances surrounding your departure? And you get that information directly from the candidate. And then you need to go out and corroborate that or verify that by talking to others who have worked for the company, worked directly with the individual. And you'll find in many cases that someone getting fired was, yes, of course, there are egregious situations where someone has, not done their job or done something that's bordering on, criminal. But in many cases, it's more about a change in direction of the company or perhaps a restructuring of the company. And it's, so again, I don't assume anything. I note it, and then I do more due diligence around that change or transition. So I would say to people, it's, there's nothing, you may encounter these kinds of detours along the road. You may get fired, but that should not by any means limit your opportunities for future growth. I really believe that. I believe that people have the opportunity to grow and become even stronger executives following a disappointing episode.
That's very helpful and encouraging. So we're going to go to our last question, Anne, which is, do you think that there is a difference in work ethics and motivation between different generations?
I love this question. And you know what? I am embracing this. I hear a lot of senior level executives who've been in the work, who are, I would say, what we would call baby boomer age executives, complaining about the cultural divide between boomers and millennials or Gen Z employees. And honestly, I think it's all good. I think it's healthy for leaders to be challenged by their employees, for leaders to listen to what these younger and probably more vocal employees have to say. There's a, I think there needs to be a healthy dialogue. We're seeing this really dramatically across the media sector because newsrooms in particular have always been places where you attract an employee base that's really all about, holding the powerful to account and shining a light on wrongdoing. So you've got a base of employees who are all about uncovering bad actors. And these individuals are not shy about expressing their points of view. And this has just become a major issue for a lot of media companies. I think the key is for senior leaders to be open to listening to these individuals, to taking the time to talk through practical solutions, but not trying to sweep their concerns under the rug or dismiss them as being immature. So I'm actually really delighted to see this new generation of employees and prospective executives really challenging the norm.
And thank you so much for these very wise and encouraging remarks. I think if we follow your advice, we will all manage our careers beautifully. And thank you for being open to all these terrific questions. And thank you to our audience for being so engaged and for joining us from so many different places in the world. We hope you enjoyed this event and got some inspiration and ideas. We will announce the guests for next month on the Online Career Service Center and here on the YouTube channel, and hope to see you again then. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to UoPeople's YouTube channel for more interesting content. There are many different programs on this channel that you can tune into. And thank you for joining me in our first UoPeople Meets live YouTube event. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was really fun meeting with you, and I wish all of you the best as you're pursuing your various careers.
Thanks a lot.